Now, Harini, the government has justified this ban using a concept called laïcité. So, what is that concept, and how is it being used to justify this ban on prayer rooms? And do you think it's a misunderstanding of the nature of what it means for the government to be neutral to religion?
So, laicity or secularism is a concept of the separation of the state from religion. So, that basically means public state institutions should be free from religious influence. However, secularism is not incompatible with respect for religious freedoms and the principles of equality. So, you can have a secular state that still respects the rights and dignity of religious groups and religious freedoms and equality. In fact, it should be an obligation of a secular state to ensure that all religions are treated fairly and that laws, policies, and processes do not disproportionately impact or discriminate against particular religious communities.
Now, Derek, in order to get Bill 21 passed, that was the prohibition on government employees in certain jobs wearing religious symbols. To get that passed, because that law would almost certainly be struck down as a violation of the exercise of freedom of religion. To get it passed, the Quebec government invoked Section 33 of the Constitution, the Charter, which is the notwithstanding clause. It allows the government to override certain rights for 5-year periods. Uh, do you think that there's a chance? Because I don't see how this law isn't unconstitutional either. I don't see how this law doesn't violate freedom of religion. Do you think there's a chance the Quebec government will invoke Section 33 in this case?
Well, that's a good question, and at this point, it remains to be seen. We haven't seen them raise it to date, to the best of my knowledge, in response to the litigation that's been brought. So that remains an open question and one that I could only speculate on. But I think it does raise a bigger question of how this directive is sort of an extension of Bill 21. So not necessarily with respect to the notwithstanding clause, but the sentiment, the principle in Bill 21 was one that presented religion as something that needed to be kept hidden or private or a secret, that it's not something that should be expressed in a public space. Now, in Bill 21, it was limited ostensibly. Bill 21 was only designed to regulate government actors, employees of the government who might be seen as representing the government or associated with the government, and therefore Bill 21 was presented as just in that specific category, trying to present neutrality. Now, whatever you think of that approach, and we think it's very problematic, which is why we intervened in the constitutional challenge to that bill, which is still underway. But whatever you think of that approach, this directive is taking that further. And instead of just applying those principles to government actors, it is now imposing them on private citizens, students, kids.
Right. Yeah.
And it's quite extraordinary to think that kids in a prayer who are praying with one another in a school hallway are somehow implicating the state's duty of neutrality. It really is putting the duty in reverse.
And one of the things, Derek, that really stood out to me as shocking in this case is that the government has said they're not banning prayer, that students can pray silently and discreetly. So, how is it possibly the role of the government to tell private citizens how they may or may not pray?
Well, it simply isn't. And with respect, that's like saying the government isn't banning speech, they're only banning speech that isn't silent. It's effectively a ban. And it really isn't the government's role to tell us how we must or must not talk to God. And I think for those that are supportive of this law, the question I would ask is, if you're okay with the government telling you you must not pray, would you be okay with them telling them that you must pray or how you must pray? Because the principle is the same. In both cases, the government is stepping into your personal spiritual exercises and telling you how you can observe them. And that's hugely problematic.
Harini, anything you want to add there? We've got about a minute left.
So yeah, the problem with this is really that it is telling students how they can and cannot pray, and that is very counter to the actual principles of laicity or secularism itself.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's just an absolutely shocking statement for a politician to make, to say this is how you should pray. I mean, that to me is inherently not neutral. It's expressing the government expressing a directive on private citizens on how they need to practice their religion. It's absolutely appalling to me. When we come back from this break, I want to talk about what the Canadian Civil Liberties Association is doing to challenge this law.